Okay, sabi dito sa International Chamber of Commerce, ang Incoterms daw are the international commercial terms. Okay? So, who publishes the Incoterms rules? Since its founding in 1919, the International Chamber of Commerce has been committed in the facilitation of international trade. Different practices and legal interpretations between traders around the world necessitated a common set of rules and guidelines. As a response, they published the first Incoterms rules in 1936. So, ang unang mga Incoterms or the international commercial terms has been published way back 1936 pa. Okay? So, since 1936, the ICC or the International Chamber of Commerce have been maintaining and developing them ever since. Okay? So, wala daw noong 1936, meron ng Incoterms sa buong mundo. Okay? So, when we talk about international commercial terms, we are talking about the commercial terms that are being used sa buong mundo. Okay? So, it's not just the Philippines that is using it, but the whole world. Okay? So, kung ano yung standard for the commercial terms, okay, the International Chamber of Commerce is the one who is creating it. Okay? So, as of this moment, meron na tayong Incoterms 2020 na tinatawag. Okay? So, before, wala pa siyang bagong update itong si ICC or si International Chamber of Commerce. But, after 2019, they come up to the new Incoterms, or what we are now fond of saying, the Incoterms 2020. This is the newest edition of the Incoterms rules, and it will help to prepare the business for the next century global trade. Okay? So, Incoterms are being used in the worldwide trade. So, what does Incoterm stand for? Okay? Ano ba daw nga yung ibig sabihin ng Incoterms? So, Incoterm is an acronym standing for International Commercial Terms. Okay? So, International Commercial Terms. It is a trademark of the International Chamber of Commerce that is registered in several countries. Okay? The Incoterms rules features abbreviations for terms like FOB for free on board, DAP for delivered at place, XWorks or EXW for XWorks, CIP for carriage and insurance paid to, which all have very precise meanings for the sale of goods around the world. So, when you encounter an Incoterm, these are acronyms of certain commercial terms. Okay? So, if you've heard of FOB, CFR, CIF, DAP, DAT, so those are your examples of Incoterms. Okay? So, these are abbreviated words for the commercial terms that is being used around the world. Okay? So, these terms hold universal meaning for buyers and sellers around the world. And if you are a financial analyst, for example, in the city of London, then you might associate the acronym FCA with the United Kingdom's Financial Conduct Authority. However, for importers and exporters around the world, FCA are initials for free carrier, or the seller's obligation to deliver the goods to the carrier nominated by the buyer at the seller's premises or another named place. Okay? So don't be confused because there are also different abbreviations in the business world. Okay? But when we are talking about Incoterms or the global trade, there are a specific meaning for that particular abbreviations. Again, so let us now define the Incoterms as per the Wikipedia. Okay? It says here that the Incoterms or the international commercial terms are a series of predefined commercial terms published by the International Chamber of Commerce, and it relates to the international commercial law. Okay? They are widely used in the international commercial transactions or procurement processes, and their use is encouraged by trade councils, courts, and international lawyers. A series of three-letter trade terms related to common contractual sales practices. The Incoterms rules are intended primarily to clearly communicate the tasks, the cost, and the risk associated with the global or international transportation and delivery of goods. Okay, the Incoterms inform sales contracts defining respective obligations, cost, and risk involved in the delivery of goods from the seller to the buyer. Okay, but they do not themselves conclude a contract, determine the price payable, currency or credit terms, govern contract law, or define where title to goods transfers. The Incoterms rules are accepted by governments, legal authorities, and practitioners worldwide for the interpretation of most commonly used terms in the international trade. They are intended to reduce or remove altogether uncertainties arising from the different interpretation of the rules in different countries. As such, they are regularly incorporated into sales contracts worldwide. Okay? So when we are talking about Incoterms, we are talking about the commercial terms only. Okay? And it does not tell us what is the price payable for the certain importation or exportation. Okay? So, we can say that Incoterms shall be used for the imports and exports globally. Okay? So, kung itong mga Incoterms na to, it will just tell you kung hanggang saan ang obligation ni na buyer at ni seller. At kung ano yung mga risk that can happen or that an importer and an exporter can incur for their particular shipment. Okay? So, the Incoterms will just tell us kung hanggang saan at kung ano yung obligasyon ni buyer at ni seller for that particular shipment. Okay? So, later on, we are going to study on that. Okay, so let us now discuss our Incoterms 2020 and how are they going to affect the global trade. Okay, so the International Chamber of Commerce has published new Incoterms 2020 that have come into effect nga on the 1st of January 2020. The ICC originally published Incoterms in 1936 as what I've said earlier. Okay, and now we already have the Incoterms 2020. Okay, so the first one of the Incoterms 2020, okay, is the X works. But by the way, there are 11 terms in the Incoterms 2020, okay, and there are 7 of these terms for any mode of transport. Okay, by the way, there are different kinds of Incoterms for the different kinds of transportation. Okay, so for example, the shipment was shipped via an airplane, then there are Incoterms for that particular shipment. And then when a shipment was shipped via a vessel, okay, then there is a particular Incoterm for that particular shipment as well. So let's proceed with the X works or the EXW or the X works or the X warehouse. So the number 1 Incoterm, X works, is when the seller places the goods at the disposal of the buyer at the seller's premise or at another named place. Okay? X works, it means that the seller will just have your goods or your shipment ready at a particular warehouse at a particular port of shipment. Okay? So itong sa X works, nandoon siya, doon mo kukunin ang goods. If you are the buyer, doon mo kukunin ang goods sa warehouse ni seller. Okay? So all the obligations that you are going to incur or all the responsibilities and all the charges that is going to be incurred from the seller's warehouse up to the buyer's warehouse will be covered by the buyer. Okay? So the seller's obligation is just to have the goods ready in the seller's warehouse. That's it. No other things the seller will be doing for the buyer. So, lahat ng kanyang, his only obligation is to just have the shipment ready inside the warehouse. Okay? The seller does not need to load the goods on any collecting vehicle, nor does it need to clear them for export where such clearance is applicable. So si seller nga, he doesn't need to do anything else aside from having the shipment ready inside his or her warehouse. So that is the only obligation that the seller is going to do for an X works Incoterm. Okay, so if the terms of shipment is X work, the delivery will be at the seller's warehouse at the country of origin. So for example, the country of origin is Singapore, then the seller just need to have the shipment ready on the warehouse there in Singapore. Okay, and then for the main carriage, it is freight prepaid or freight collect, and it should be paid by the buyer. And the buyer also has the option to have a port-to-port insurance. Okay, so it is the insurance is excluded in the seller's price, and the mode of transport for X works is multimodal. Okay, so when we talk about multimodal, it means that it can be via sea or via air. Okay, please take note of that. To summarize the X works, the seller will just makes the goods available at his plant, factory or warehouse for it to be ready for exportation. Then the buyer will be responsible for the loading of goods at the seller's warehouse to the delivery vehicle provided by the buyer. The buyer should also clears the goods for exports and loads them to the carrying vessel or aircraft. And then at the buyer's option, at their option, they can secure a marine insurance from a local surety or insurance firm. And for the main carriage, it may be prepaid at origin or collect at the destination. Or when we talk about the freight is the transportation of your shipment from the country of origin to the country of destination. Okay? Okay. So for example, a buyer, halimbawa si Nino, he decided to import. So you are the buyer. Nino is the buyer, and he decided to import, as for example, tires from Singapore. Okay. So the seller, for example, the seller from Singapore is Danilo. Okay. Danilo is the seller, and then what have you both decided for the Incoterms or for the terms of shipment of this importation would be X works. So Danilo will just, or the seller will just have the shipment ready in his or her factory or in his or her warehouse at Singapore. Okay? And then you, Nino, the buyer, will do all the necessary things, or you're going to rent a truck or a certain shipping line for that particular shipment to come to the Philippines. So all of the charges, all of the things that needs to be done should be at your responsibility, Nino, because your terms of shipment is X works. The FCA or the free carrier. FCA, free carrier, and it is should be followed by a named place as well. Okay? So sa FCA, the seller delivers the goods to the carrier or another person nominated by the buyer at the seller's premises or another named place. Okay? So dito sa FCA, the seller is going to deliver your cargo into a different place aside from his or her warehouse. So for example, the buyer and the seller decided that they are going to have an FCA terms of shipment. Okay? And then the buyer says that he is the one who is going to get a truck to get all those cargoes from the warehouse up to the truck. Okay? So that is a local truck or a truck from the country of origin or from the country of shipment. Okay? So that is the name place or the free carrier or the FCA. Okay? The parties are well advised to specify as explicitly as possible the point within the named place of delivery as the risk passes to the buyer at that point. Okay? So for example, again, Nino and Danilo. Nino is the buyer or the importer, and Danilo is the seller or the exporter. And then they decided that they are going to have the FCA terms of shipment. Okay? And then Danilo said, Nino or the buyer says that he needs the the shipment at a particular place in Singapore. So it is still in the country of origin. So from the seller's warehouse, the NILO, the exporter or the seller should get a truck or a vessel or a carriage or whatever kind of transportation that he can use to transfer the shipment from one place, from the warehouse to the place where Nino would like that particular shipment to be delivered at. But that is still at the country of origin. So that is FCA. So the delivery is to the forwarder's or the carrier's warehouse or at an NVOCC at the country of origin. So for example, they are going to have it consolidated. Then they need an NVOCC for that particular shipment to be transferred to the Philippines or to be delivered to the Philippines. Then the seller should have that particular shipment delivered to the office or to the warehouse of that particular consolidator inside the country of origin. Okay? By the way, the country of origin is the country of export, guys. Please take note of that. And the country of importation is the country of destination. Okay? Please take note of that. For the main carriage or the freight, it should be freight collect paid by the buyer at the destination. So sa FCA, ang freight ay binabayaran ni buyer at the destination. And for the port-to-port insurance, the buyer's or the importer's option, it is again excluded in the seller's price. Okay? The seller's price will just be from his warehouse to the place where that particular importer would like to have their shipment delivered in the country of origin. Okay, again, for the FCA, it is also a multimodal, or it can be used by air or by sea. And the origin other charges, okay, are all the incidental expenses incurred by the seller until his obligation to deliver is fulfilled. Okay, so the origin other charges are the charges that they incurred from the warehouse up to the place where the seller wants his or her shipment to be delivered at. Okay? Let us know, please jot down that for the other charges, okay, all expenses incidental in placing goods at the carrier's disposal. Okay, number 1 is loading to delivery vehicle at seller's warehouse, trucking, haulage, inland freight from the seller's warehouse to the carrier, and the internal insurance, if ever there is any, seller's warehouse to the carrier, and the export documentation or clearing. Okay? So export documentation and clearing is included in your FCA other charges. By the way, the formula for FCA is equal to X works plus other charges. Please take note of that. X works plus other charges. And also note that the carrier is the ones responsible for unloading goods from delivery vehicle and loading them to carrying vessel or aircraft at the country of origin. And then the marine insurance, again, it is at the buyer's option, may be secured from local or surety insurance firm. And the main carriage, it is paid by the buyer, or it is a freight collect at the destination for FCA. Again, guys, computation formula for FCA is equal to X works plus other charges. Formula, the X works is equal to the cost of the goods. Okay? The cost of the goods only. No other charges for your X works. Free alongside ship is the next Incoterm. Okay, your free alongside ship is where the seller delivers when the goods are placed alongside the vessel. Okay? Example, on a quay or a barge, nominated by the buyer at the named port of shipment. Okay? So when we talk about free alongside ship, so from the name itself, the shipment is delivered up to the side of the ship from the word itself, but it can also be delivered at a quay or at a barge or at the pier. Okay? It should be delivered alongside the vessel. It can also be delivered at the wharf, at the country of origin, or the country of shipment. So that means all the charges that the shipment has incurred from the seller's warehouse up to the side of the vessel or up to the pier or up to the wharf, those should be charged to the buyer. Okay? So that will be included at the seller's price. Okay? So the risk of loss of or damage to the goods passes when the products are alongside the ship. The buyer bears all costs from that moment onwards. Okay, so as I've said earlier, the cost of the goods and all the other charges from the warehouse up to the side of the ship will be covered if the Incoterm is FAS or free alongside ship. Okay, again, free alongside ship is for the named port of shipment. Okay. So the main carriage or the freight will be freight collect, and it should be again paid by the buyer at the destination. The freight is paid by the buyer. Okay, so don't be confused, guys. This is really confusing. Again, please take note that your seller is the exporter, and the exporter and the seller is in the country of origin or the country of shipment, and then the buyer is your importer, and he or she is at the country of origin. At the country of destination or the port of destination or the importing country. Okay, so again, for the FAS, freight collect, and it is paid by the buyer at the destination. And the insurance also, it is paid by the buyer, and the mode of transport for FAS is by the sea only. Okay? And the origin other charges are all the incidental expenses incurred by the seller until his obligation to deliver is fulfilled. Okay? So again, please take note that for your FAS, the mode of payment, the mode of transport is by sea only. Okay? FAS by sea. X-Works and FCA are multimodal, or they can be by sea or by air. Okay, but for your free alongside ship or free alongside vessel, it is only for sea shipment. Okay, so the formula for your is equal to, again, X works plus other charges. The difference is that the other charges only. Okay, so for your other charges, for FAS, it includes the loading to delivery vehicle or lighter, the inland freight from the seller's warehouse to the quayway, to the quay or the wharf, the internal insurance if there is any from the warehouse up to the side of the vessel, and also the export documentation and clearance. So that is what is included in the other charges for your FAS. Okay? And also please note that the buyer is the ones responsible for unloading the goods from delivery vehicle and loading them on board the vessel. Okay? The marine insurance at the buyer's option may be secured from local surety or insurance firm. By the way, when we talk about local insurance firm, it means that that is an insurance firm at the country of origin or at the country of shipment. Okay? That is what your local insurance is. That is different from the main insurance or the insurance premium itself, which is the insurance that is being used by the of that particular shipment for the protection of the cargo that is traveling from one country to another. That is your main insurance. And for the main carriage or for the freight, it is paid by the buyer again at the country of destination. It is again a freight collect Incoterm. Okay? Yes, lahat ng mga gastos mula sa seller's warehouse up. No, it's not the buyer. Si seller ang bahala doon. Mula sa seller's warehouse up to the alongside ship. Hindi si buyer. Si Si seller ang bahala doon. Si buyer ang bahala mula doon pagsakay ng barko hanggang sa ma-deliver na sa kanyang warehouse sa Pilipinas. So, ang ano kasi nun is, for example, paano sila magbabayaran? So, itong si exporter or si seller, magko-quote siya ng babayaran ni seller. Babayaran pa rin naman niya ni seller kay buyer. Okay? Guys, don't confuse it ha. Lahat naman yan, babayaran pa rin ni buyer kay seller. Okay? Pero yung responsibilities and the risk involved, si Incoterms ang mag-decide. Okay? So for example, yung lahat naman ng nagastos ni seller mula sa warehouse niya hanggang sa free alongside ship, sisingilin niya yun kay seller. Pero, if ever na may mangyari from the seller's warehouse up to the buyer's, up to the side of the vessel, may mangyari sa shipment nila, kapag may nangyari doon, hindi babayaran ni buyer yung shipment na yon. Kasi dapat, iingatan ni seller yung kanyang shipment up to the place where they decided to transfer the responsibility. Ganun yung Incoterms. Nagets nyo ba, guys? On board. So what is FOB? The seller delivers the goods on board the vessel nominated by the buyer at the named port of shipment or procures the goods already so delivered. Okay, so when we talk about FOB or free on board, it means that the seller should deliver the cargo, okay, up to the named vessel of the buyer. Okay? So the buyer is the one who's going to select what shipping line are they going to use for the particular shipment that they ordered from the seller. Okay? But the seller for an FOB terms of shipment is the ones to deliver the goods up to the vessel. Okay? So, from their warehouse, they are going to deliver the goods to the vessel that is nominated by the buyer. Okay, so all the risks that are involved and all the charges that they incur from the warehouse, from the seller's warehouse up to the vessel shall be incurred or shall be charged to the buyer. To the seller, to the exporter. Okay, so they are going to deliver on board the carrying vessel at the country of origin. Okay? So the risk of loss or damage to the goods passes when the products are on board the vessel. The buyer bears all costs from that moment onwards. Okay? So ang responsibility ni seller ay hanggang mailagay niya ang shipment doon sa kanyang vessel. Okay? So kapag nailagay na niya ang mga shipment or mga cargo sa vessel ni buyer, tapos na ang responsibility ni seller sa kanya. From the vessel onwards up to the country of importation or to the port of destination, all the risks are transferred na kay buyer. So si buyer na ang bahala sa lahat. Kapag nailagay na ni seller ang mga shipment doon sa vessel, ang bahala na afterwards ay si buyer. Okay? The main carriage again is freight collect at the destination. So si buyer na ang bahala pa rin sa freight. Okay? And then for the insurance, si buyer pa rin. For the main insurance or the insurance premium or the port-to-port insurance, the buyer is the ones going to pay for it, and it is excluded from the seller's price. And the mode of transport for FOB is by sea only. Okay, so we have two multimodal, the FCA and the X-Works, and then we already have two C Incoterms, which is the FAS and the FOB. Okay, and then for the origin other charges, all incidental expenses incurred by the seller until his obligation to deliver again is fulfilled. Your formula for the FOB computation is X works plus other charges. And the other charges are loading to truck at the seller's warehouse, tracking haulage inland freight at the seller's warehouse to the port of loading, internal insurance or the local insurance, arrastre, wharfage, LCL charges or those charges for loading to the vessel, government customs clearances, export documentation or the forwarder's fee, and the miscellaneous expenses, and all the other expenses occurred from delivering the cargo from the seller's warehouse up to the vessel of the buyer. Okay, so that is your FOB. Is CFR or cost and freight. CFR, cost and freight. Okay? So for the CFR, the seller delivers the goods on board the vessel or procures the goods already so delivered. Okay? The risk of loss of or damage to the goods passes when the products are on board the vessel. Okay? The seller must contract for and pay the cost and freight necessary to bring the goods to the named port of destination. Okay? So your CFR is just like your FOB. Okay? So the seller will be delivering the goods from the seller's warehouse up to the vessel. Okay? So the cargo should be on board the vessel. But for your CFR, the seller is the ones who's going to pay for the freight or for your main carriage. Okay? So that is the difference between your FOB and CFR. FOB, the seller will just deliver the goods on board the vessel, but the buyer is the ones who's going to pay for the main freight or the transportation from the port of origin up to the port of destination. But for the CFR, the seller will also deliver the goods on board the vessel, but he is also the one who's going to pay for the freight or the transportation of goods from the port of origin to the port of destination. Okay? So just like FOB, the delivery is at the port, is on board your carrying vessel at the country of origin, and then the main carriage is prepaid. Okay? At the country of origin. So again, for our main carriage for CFR, it is freight prepaid at the country of origin. Kanina, freight collect. So when it's freight collect, si buyer ang magbabayad ng freight. But if it's freight prepaid, si seller ang magbabayad ng freight. Okay? And for the port-to-port insurance or for the main insurance, it is still the buyer who is going to pay for the importer, for the port-to-port or for your insurance premium. Okay? And the insurance is excluded in the seller's price. Okay? And the mode of transportation is by sea only. So CFR is a sea Incoterm. Okay? And the origin other charges are just the same as your FOB, other charges. Okay? So for the formula for your CFR, it is FOB plus freight. Okay? And there are also other formulas for your CFR that you can use, but we are just going to discuss all of that in the computation discussion. Okay? So for now, let us just take note of the main formula. So CFR is equal to FOB plus freight. Okay? Where other charges deemed included in FOB cost if not stipulated as a separate value from the FOB. Okay? So the other charges is included in FOB if it is not stipulated as a separate value. Okay? Please take note that, for example, the problem does not say that the other charges is excluded from the FOB. Okay? It means that the other charges is already included in the FOB. If the problem or if the statement doesn't say otherwise. Okay? And for the freight, the ocean freight charges is paid by the seller or it is a freight prepaid Incoterm. Your CFR is a freight prepaid Incoterm. Okay? Or your Incoterm number 6, CIF or your cost insurance and freight. Okay? So from the name itself, cost insurance and freight. Okay? So the seller delivers the goods on board the vessel or procures the goods already so delivered. The risk of loss of or damage to the goods passes when the products are on the ship. Okay, so your CIF is just like your FOB and your CFR. Okay, the seller is the ones who deliver the goods on board the vessel, and the risk also has been transferred from then on. Okay, so when the seller delivers the goods on board the vessel, the risk has already been transferred to the seller. But for the CIF, the freight and also the insurance is now paid by the seller. Okay. FOB, when the terms of shipment is FOB, the insurance and the freight are covered by the buyer. But for the CIF, the insurance and the freight are covered or paid by the seller this time. Okay? The seller must contract for and pay the cost and freight necessary to bring the goods at the named port of destination. The seller also contracts for insurance covered against the buyer's risk of loss of or damage to the goods during the carriage. The buyer should note that under CIF, the seller is required to obtain insurance only on minimum cover. Should the buyer wish to have more insurance protection, it will need either to agree as much expressly with the seller or to make its own extra insurance arrangement. Okay? So for your CIF, the seller is the ones to pay for the freight. Okay? So he or she is the one to contract for and pay the cost and freight necessary to bring the goods to the named port of destination. So siya yung hahanap ng consolidator or a shipping line for that particular shipment to go to the port of destination. And he is also the ones to pay for the insurance. Okay? But the insurance should just be the minimum insurance, and if ever that the buyer would like another or better protection for the shipment, then the seller and the buyer should decide on what kind of insurance that they are going to get, and they're going also to just talk about the payment for that particular insurance, which is above the minimum of what the seller should be giving this particular shipment. So for the summary of your CIF, the delivery is on board the carrying vessel at origin. Your main carriage is freight prepaid by the seller at the origin. And then your port-to-port insurance is included in the seller's price, or it is the seller who's going to get the insurance and pay for it. And your CIF is also a Incoterm. Okay? And for your other charges, all incidental expenses incurred by seller until his obligation to deliver is fulfilled. Okay? And for the formula for your CIF is equal to FOB plus insurance plus freight. FOB plus insurance plus freight, wherein FOB is the cost of goods plus other charges. Your freight is the ocean freight charges paid by the seller or freight prepaid. And your insurance is the cost of marine insurance premium. So that is your CIF. Okay, our next Incoterm is CPT or carriage paid to. Okay, the seller delivers the goods to the carrier or another person nominated by the seller at an agreed place if any such site is agreed between parties. The seller must contract for and pay the cost of carriage necessary to bring the goods to the named place of destination. So for the CPT is just like the FCA, wherein the seller is going to deliver at the named place or of the buyer at the country of origin. But the difference is that for CPT, the seller is the one who's going to pay for the freight, for the main freight. But in FCA, the ones who pay for the main freight is the buyer. So that is the difference between CPT and FCA. But again, the delivery is at the forwarder or the carrier's warehouse at origin, and the port-to-port insurance is still covered by the buyer. And for the mode of transport, it is a multimodal, and the origin other charges are all incidental expenses incurred by the seller until his obligation to deliver is fulfilled. But as for me, this CPT and FCA are being used for the air shipment. Okay, because there are certain or there are specific Incoterms for the sea shipment if they are delivered at a named place for a certain place at the country of origin, if they are of sea shipment. But as for me, the CPT and FCA are being used for the air shipment specifically. Okay, and the formula for your CPT is FCA plus freight. Okay, wherein the freight or air freight charges paid by the seller or it is a freight prepaid, and the carrier should be responsible for unloading goods from the delivery vehicle and loading them on board the vessel or aircraft. And the marine insurance at the buyer's option may be secured from local surety or insurance firm. CIP, Carriage and Insurance Paid To. The seller has the same responsibilities as CPT, but they also contract for insurance cover against the buyer's risk of loss or damage to the goods during the carriage. The buyer should note that under the CIP, the seller is required to obtain insurance only on minimum cover. Should the buyer wish to have more insurance protection, it will need either to agree as much expressly with the seller or to make its own extra insurance agreements. Okay? So for the CIP, it is just like your FCA and your CPT, but the difference is that the seller is going to pay for the freight and for the insurance as well. Okay? So in CPT, the seller will just be only paying for the freight, but at CIP, they are going to also pay the insurance premium or the port-to-port insurance. Okay? But the delivery is the same. It is at the forwarders or at the carrier's warehouse at the country of origin, and the mode of transport can also be by air and by sea. And the origin other charges are all incidental expenses incurred by the seller until his obligation to deliver is also fulfilled. But again, for me, the CIP can also specifically be used for air shipment. Okay? So, the formula for your CIP is FCA plus freight plus insurance, and the insurance is the transport insurance against risk of loss or damage to the goods during the carriage from the port of origin to the port of destination, and the freight is the ocean or the air freight charges paid by the seller, or it is freight prepaid. Okay, but please take note that the carrier is the ones responsible for unloading goods from the delivery vehicle to loading them on board the vessel or aircraft. So for your FCA, CPT, and CIP, the carrier is the ones who is responsible to transfer the shipment from the truck or from the carrier itself up to the main vessel or aircraft to deliver it to the port of or to the country of destination. So that is your CIP. Okay, so for the Incoterms, for the next Incoterm, for the D group is DAP or delivered at place, at the named place of destination. Okay? The seller delivers when the goods are placed at the disposal of the buyer on the arriving means of transport ready for unloading at the named place of destination. The seller bears all risk involved in bringing the goods to the named place. Okay? So for your DAP, The delivery is at the buyer's or at the importer's designated place or warehouse at the country of importation or at the country of destination. Okay? Kapag mga D group, it is already at the country of destination or at the place of destination. Nandoon na siya sa country ni importer. Okay? The main carriage is freight prepaid at the origin. Okay? So when we talk about prepaid, it is paid by the seller. The port-to-port insurance is buyer or importer's option. It is excluded from the seller's price. Okay? And the mode of transport is multimodal or air or sea. Okay? And then there will be an origin or destination other charges. Okay, so for your D group, there is already two kinds of other charges. One is origin other charges, and the next is destination other charges. Okay, and these are all the incidental expenses incurred by the seller until his obligation to deliver is fulfilled. Okay. So for your DAP, your origin other charges are all the costs incurred in bringing goods from the seller's warehouse until it is loaded on board the carrying vessel or aircraft. Okay? And then the destination other charges are the cost of unloading goods from arriving vessel or aircraft at destination. Okay? Inland freight from port of discharge to buyer's designated place at destination is also included in the destination other charges. And the freight is an air or ocean freight charges. And the importer or the buyer is the one who is responsible for the import documentation clearances as well as payment of duties, taxes, and other charges. So for the DAP, i-deliver ni seller dapat ang shipment sa buyer's importer's designated place. So up to the country of destination. Okay? And he is also the ones to pay for your freight or your main freight. But for your insurance, it is the buyer who needs to pay for the insurance and not the seller. Okay? So si seller lang, hanggang doon lang siya sa pag-deliver sa place ni buyer sa country of destination or sa country of importation. Okay? So, for your formula, your DAP is equal to FOB plus freight plus destination other charges if it is by sea, and if it is by air, DAP is equal to FCA plus freight plus destination other charges. Okay? So that is your DAP or delivered at place at the named place of destination. So our next Incoterm is the newest Incoterm that replaces the delivered at terminal from the last Incoterm, from the old Incoterms. Okay? So the newest Incoterm that is added in Incoterm 2020 is the DPU or the delivered at place unloaded. Okay? Delivered at place unloaded. So it replaces the Incoterm 2010 DAT. Okay, DPU replaces the former Incoterm delivered at terminal. The seller delivers when the goods, once unloaded, are placed at the disposal of the buyer at a named place of destination. So from the name itself, it should be the obligation of the seller to unload that particular shipment into the buyer's named place of destination or into the buyer's warehouse. Okay? So it is his or her responsibility to deliver from the seller's warehouse up to the buyer's named place of delivery and unload it. Okay? So the risk of unloading, so for example, something happened when the shipment is being unloaded, then it is still the responsibility of the seller and not the buyer, although it is already at the named place of the buyer's destination. So it is still the seller that bears all the risk involved in bringing the goods to and unloading them at the named place of destination. Okay, so that is what your DPU is. Okay, so it's like delivered at place, but it does not include the unloading. Okay, so the formula for your DPU is equal to FOB plus freight plus destination other charges if it is by sea, and if it is by air, your DPU formula is FCA plus freight plus destination other charges. Okay, so our last Incoterm is your DDP or delivered duty paid. Okay? So for your DDP or delivered duty paid, the seller delivers the goods when the goods are placed at the disposal of the buyer, cleared for import on the arriving means of transport, ready for unloading at the named place of destination. Okay? The seller bears all the cost and risk involved in bringing the goods to the place of destination, and they must clear the products not only for export but also for import, to pay any duty for both export and import, and to carry out all customs formalities. Okay? So sa DDP, this is the extreme responsibility, or it is the Incoterm wherein the responsibility of the seller is at most. Okay? So, the delivery for DDP is again at the buyer or the importer's designated place or warehouse. Okay? They are the ones who's also going to pay for the freight. Okay? But the port-to-port insurance is again at the buyer's, it is at the buyer's or the importer's option. Okay? And the mode of transport for DDP is also multimodal or air or sea. And origin and destination other charges are all the incidental expenses incurred by seller until his obligation to deliver is fulfilled. But for the DDP, the seller is also the one who is going to pay for the duties, taxes, and other charges. So, as what I've said earlier, the seller bears all the cost and risk involved in bringing the goods to the place where the buyer wants them to be. Okay, that's why it is the ultimate risk for the seller. Okay, so the seller should be responsible from the country of origin up to the country of destination, and he or she should also be paying for the duties, taxes, and other charges that should be incurred by the shipment itself. Okay, not only the export charges but also the import charges. Okay, so let me discuss the origin other charges for your DDP. So it includes all the costs incurred in bringing all goods from the seller's warehouse until it is being loaded on board the carrying vessel or aircraft. That is your origin other charges. And your destination other charges, this includes the unloading of goods from vessel or aircraft at the country of destination or the country of importation, the import and the customs documentation and clearing or the brokerage fee, payment of duties, taxes, and other charges, arrastre and wharfage, other port charges, hauling from port of discharge to the buyer's designated place or warehouse, and the freight is air or ocean freight charges, which is paid by the seller, or your D group is a prepaid. Okay, freight prepaid. Okay, please also take note that the buyer is the ones responsible for unloading goods from the delivery vehicle. Okay, and seller, he is going to assume all risk from the port of origin up to the buyer's warehouse, which is opposite of X works, which is the minimum risk for the seller. Okay, minimum risk for the seller is X works, but the maximum risk for the seller is your DDP. DDP is also referred to as your door-to-door delivery scheme. Other charges for C, for the DTP, FCA plus freight plus destination other charges by air. Pare-parehas lang ang formula ng the D group. So let me now summarize the distinction of insurance, freight, and delivery for all the Incoterms 2020. Okay? So please take note of this, guys. So for insurance premium paid by the seller, or insurance premium is included in the quotation of the seller, ang mga Incoterms na yon ay CIP and CIF. Okay? So for the insurance premium paid by the buyer at his option and insured with local insurance firm at country of destination, which is also included from the seller's price, the Incoterms are all the other Incoterms aside from the CIP and CIF. So that is Ex-Works, FAS, FCA, FOB, CFR, CPT, DPU, DAP, and DDP. Okay? So that means the insurance is excluded from the seller's price. For the freight prepaid by the seller or paid prior to departure at the port of origin included in the seller's price, the Incoterms are Ex-Works, CPT, CFR, CIP, CIF, DPU, DAP, and DDP. So that is for your freight prepaid. For freight collect, which is paid by the buyer upon arrival of goods at the port of destination, excluded from the seller's price, that is FOB, CFR, and Ex-Works, FAS, FOB, and FCA. Okay? So for the delivery, delivered on board the vessel at the port of loading or origin, so the Incoterms are FOB, CFR, and CIF. And for the delivered to carrier or forwarder or NVOCC at the port of origin, that is FCA, CPT, and CIP. And for the delivered to buyer's designated place, that is DAP and DDT. And for the delivered unloaded at the buyer's place as well, that is DAP, DDP, and DPU. Okay. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope that you have learned a lot from this video. And that's it. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.